There's a word people throw around when talking about places far from everything, somewhere quiet, distant, and almost forgotten. It paints a clear picture the moment you hear it, even if you've never really stopped to question where it came from or why it sounds the way it does. That word is boondocks. It feels familiar, almost natural, like it's always been part of everyday language. But what most people don't realize is that it didn't actually start in English, and its meaning wasn't always what we think it is today. So where did it come from, and how did it end up meaning the middle of nowhere? Today we're diving into that question, right here, on History of Simple Things. The word boondocks didn't begin as an English term at all. It traces back to the Philippines, where the Tagalog word Bundok simply means mountain. In its original context, Bundok referred to rugged, elevated terrain, places that were often difficult to access and far from developed towns. Over time, the meaning expanded slightly in casual usage to imply not just mountains themselves, but also the remote rural areas associated with them. This nuance is important because it reflects how geography shapes language. In a country made up of thousands of islands, mountainous regions were often isolated from urban centers, so the word naturally took on connotations of distance and remoteness. The transformation from Bundok to Boondocks happened during the early 20th century when American soldiers were stationed in the Philippines following the Philippine-American War. As these soldiers interacted with locals, they picked up bits of the language, including Bundok. However, like many borrowed words, it didn't stay exactly the same. English speakers adapted it to fit their own pronunciation patterns, gradually turning Boondok into Boondok. The added S came later, likely because English often uses plural forms to describe regions or general areas, similar to words like sticks or outskirts. By the time soldiers returned home, the word had already begun to shift in both sound and meaning. Once boondocks entered American English, its meaning broadened even further. It no longer referred specifically to mountains, but to any place considered remote, undeveloped, or far removed from civilization. This semantic shift is common when words move between cultures. The original geographic specificity of boondok was replaced with a more general idea of isolation. In the United States, where landscapes vary widely, boondocks became a flexible term that could describe forests, plains, or any rural area that felt disconnected from urban life. Over time, it settled into its modern definition, the middle of nowhere, regardless of the actual terrain. Military slang played a major role in spreading the term. Soldiers often developed their own vocabulary, especially when stationed abroad, blending local words with their native language. When American troops brought boondocks back home, it carried with it the lived experience of being in unfamiliar, often isolated environments. The word gained traction because it filled a descriptive gap. It captured not just physical distance, but also the feeling of being far removed from comfort and familiarity. As veterans reintegrated into civilian life, they continued using the term, and it gradually entered mainstream speech. And one reason boondocks endured is because it's vivid and flexible. Unlike more formal terms like rural or remote, it carries a sense of character. It suggests not just distance but a certain kind of place, quiet, undeveloped, and perhaps a little forgotten. Language tends to preserve words that evoke strong imagery, and Boondocks does exactly that. It also filled a niche alongside similar expressions like the sticks, but with a slightly different tone. While both imply remoteness, Boondocks has a more specific historical origin, even if most people using it today aren't aware of that background. Even though Boondocks is now firmly part of English vocabulary, its roots remain tied to the Philippines and the Tagalog language. This makes it an example of how cultural exchange, especially during periods of conflict or colonization, can leave lasting marks on everyday speech. Words like this carry hidden histories, connecting modern usage to specific moments in time. In this case, a simple term for mountain traveled across the world and evolved into a widely recognized expression for remoteness. It also shows how quickly language can adapt when people are placed in new environments and need words that capture unfamiliar experiences. Boondocks is the kind of word that quietly carries history without announcing it. It slips easily into conversation as a simple way to describe distance, yet behind it sits a layered story shaped by geography, contact, and change. Words like this don't just label places, they reveal how people interpret space, distance, and unfamiliar environments over time. Even when the original meaning fades, the experience that shaped it lingers in how the word is used. In that sense, Boondocks isn't just about being far away. It reflects how language holds onto pieces of human movement and interaction long after those moments have passed. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.